Free agency starts in less than 24 hours. What signings do I want to see the Pistons do in free agency? What trades would I like to see the Pistons do to enable them in free agency, or maybe just bypass free agency? We're going to talk about that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Ku Cahill. You can find me over on Twitter at Ku Cahill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's PrizePicks. Use promo code LOCKEDON. So in today's episode, by the time you guys listen to this, we'll be less than 24 hours away from free agency starting. It starts on the 30th at 6 p.m. Eastern time, which, if you guys remember from a few episodes ago, I told you guys I wouldn't be here for the start of free agency because I thought free agency started on the 1st at 12 a.m. like it usually does, but I see that's not the case this year. It will be starting at 6 p.m. on Friday, so I will be here. I will be here for free agency, so you guys will get an episode late Friday night if the Pistons make some immediate moves as soon as free agency starts, which I think they possibly could. So stay tuned for that episode. So since I'm going to be around for the very beginning of free agency, I decided to make this episode just what I want to see happen, what I want the Pistons to do, what I'm predicting for them to do. Just my favorites, what I would like to see happen in the next 24 hours from now and throughout free agency. So stay tuned for that throughout the episode. The first thing we're going to discuss, we'll talk about trades later, but I want to talk about free agents. Who do I want the Pistons to sign? Who do I think they're going to sign? What do I think is going to happen, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so I think if I had to make my first prediction, I think the Pistons will offer the bag to Cam Johnson. I think there is too much smoke for there not to be a fire. I think the Pistons are going to go completely all out for Cam Johnson here. And if the reports are true that the Brooklyn Nets have like a price marked out that they just don't want to go above. Someone said, I forget who reported, I think it might have been Mark Stein, that it was at $100 million. I could see the Pistons going 4 years, $110 million, which would be $27.5 million. Everything that's been reported, everything that I've heard behind the scenes, the things that I know, or at least that I've heard, is that Cam Johnson is on the top of their wish list. Everyone's been reporting it. I've heard the same things. They do want Cam Johnson. They very much would like Cam Johnson, and Cam Johnson has some interest in joining the Pistons as well and joining Monty Williams in Detroit, his former head coach with the Phoenix Suns. Now, look, it's not about whether at the end of the day what the Pistons want and what Cam Johnson wants. At the end of the day, it's what Brooklyn Nets want. And if you talk to some Brooklyn Nets guys, you talk to some people in the community, you talk to some of their writers, some people that cover the team, the idea right now, at least that I've gotten, is that Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges were the main guys they got back for Kevin Durant. They didn't move off of Mikal Bridges for all those first-round picks. They didn't move off of DFS for all those first-round picks they could have gotten because they wanted to keep these guys and keep moving forward. So they have a very strong case and reason to want to bring back Cam Johnson. So in order for this to happen, the Pistons are going to need to somewhat break the bank to get him to come to Detroit. Do I think they're going to completely break the bank, like offer Cam Johnson $30+ million? I don't think so right now, but I do think one of the first things you'll see in free agency, maybe I'm wrong, we'll see in 24 hours. That's the point of this. It's supposed to be a little fun, see if my predictions are correct. I'd like to hear from your guys' point of view what some predictions you guys have as of right now for free agency. But I think very early in free agency, once it opens, you'll see Cam Johnson has accepted an offer sheet with the Detroit Pistons. And depending on how much it is, I think if it is over $110 million, I think they'll get him. I think the Pistons will get Cam Johnson. If it's underneath $110 million, I think it's likely the Brooklyn Nets match. And honestly, even at $110 million, I could see the Brooklyn Nets just saying, you know what, we can't lose him for nothing. Even if we're going to overpay him, we'll just have to accept this offer sheet, we'll match it, and then just trade him in a few months. Like, that might be what they feel forced to do instead of just losing him for nothing. Or maybe they come to a sign and trade with Detroit. Like, I think no matter what happens, I think the first move you see the Pistons' name attached to will be attached to Cam Johnson. So that's my first prediction, what I want in free agency and what I think will happen in free agency. If the Pistons miss on Cam Johnson, this is where my concerns, I start to have a little concerns about what's going to happen in free agency after that. We've talked about all the possible options. Last episode, we had Howard Beck on to talk about some free agent targets for the Pistons. We've talked about multiple free agent targets for the Pistons for weeks now. But I don't know if I really went, all out and said this. I have concerns. I should share it with you guys now that we're so close to the time period. If the Pistons miss on Cam Johnson, I have some big concerns that if they miss on their top guy, they'll then go overpay some mid. They'll overpay a mid type of guy. And a big overpay. And I really hope that doesn't happen. That's not what I want this team to do. I really hope that's not what they do. I would rather them, if they miss on their guys, I'd rather them just take a big contract and take some assets with it to fill the cap space for now while keeping flexibility moving forward. Because Cade is still on his rookie extension, or not rookie extension, but his rookie contract. Ivy, rookie contract. Duran, Amon. Heck, even Stu and Killian still haven't. I know Killian may not even be on the team, but those are some other guys on the team, I'm saying, Wiseman too, who are on rookie contracts. So even if they take on a bad contract right now, their cap sheet will still be fine for the next 2 years before whenever they sign Cade to that extension. So if they miss on their big guys, I'd rather just take a bad contract, get assets for it. But what I really would like them not to do is to overpay someone like overpay and go get a Karis LeVert. I don't even think Karis LeVert fits the team. I wouldn't like that signing, but like overpay for a Karis LeVert because you missed on Cam Johnson. Overpay for a Harrison Barnes because you missed on Cam Johnson. Harrison Barnes, could he do some nice things for the Pistons? Yeah. Do you want him to do those nice things at $30 million, something like crazy like that? No. Like, don't overpay for one of those guys. Dylan Brooks. I would not like them to overpay for a Dylan Brooks because they missed on one of their guys. I wouldn't like them to overpay for a Grant Williams because they missed on one of their guys. I've mentioned Kelly Oubre as a guy I'd like on the team, but I wouldn't like them to overpay for a Kelly Oubre. Like, I just hope that just because they miss on their main guys, it doesn't cause them to then panic and do what free agency was that? It was the 2015 offseason free agency when it was, was that the one with, why am I losing his name? Nicholas Batum. And then the Pistons did the same thing with Boban, John Lure, Jody Meek, like all those. However, the free agency, I think it was 2015, the free agency when everyone just started getting overpaid, and then in a few years they were all, like almost all of them were bad contracts. It was like, what the heck was going on? Like, I just hope that's not where the Pistons catch themselves just because they have cap space. I have some confidence in that they won't do that. Troy Weaver looks to be very patient with this team, which I think is the right approach as of right now, and I hope that he keeps that level of patience if they were to miss on their top guy instead of overpaying for somebody else. So, does that mean I wouldn't like a Harrison Barnes? No, that's not what that means. I would like Harrison Barnes. Does that mean I wouldn't like a Kelly Oubre, a Dylan Brooks, a Grant Williams, a guy like that? No, I'd like to. They serve a purpose on the team. If they want to sign them, I'd be cool with it, but just not a crazy overpay. And if it is a crazy overpay, I guess I should leave this one caveat, and then we'll move on. If it is a crazy overpay, let it be one for like 2 years just to soak up the cap space during that time and then get off of it quickly before the extensions kick in or it really matters. Let the overpay be like a 2-year with a team option on the back end, front-loaded a lot in the first year just to absorb that cap space. Like, if that's what they do, then maybe I'll just be straight with it. But if they were to overpay for like, who's one of the guys? Let's say they did it with like Karis LeVert or something, gave him like a 4-year contract and overpaid him. I would be very frustrated. If they did that with Dylan Brooks, 4-year contract, overpaid him, I'd be very mad. Any of these other guys, long contracts besides Cam Johnson. Outside Cam Johnson, there's no one else I want to give a long-term contract that's also being overpaid. And I'll simply say this, and then we'll move on. While I do love Cam Johnson and think he would fit perfectly, some of the injury concerns are starting to. It's not moving me off of him. I still want the Pistons to go get him. If they overpay for him, so be it. I do think there's a little bit more of a risk to it than maybe I was considering at first. At first, I thought it was clear as day. That's what you got to do. Go get your guy. But the more I've looked into some of the injury concerns, it is something that, again, it's not enough to move me completely off of them, but it is enough to make me feel like maybe I wasn't considering the risk as much as I should have at the beginning of all this. But that's how I feel as of right now heading into free agency. Let me know what you guys feel heading into free agency in less than 24 hours. Who are some of the guys who are some of the guys you're predicting the Pistons will get? If you had to make one prediction that you'll hear from a Woj notification, a Shams notification, what do you think it's going to be tomorrow? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kukio. When we come back, I want to talk about some possible trades that I would like to see happen for the Pistons in the next 3 to 4 days while I'm gone, or potentially happening as soon as free agency starts. We'll talk about that when we come back. But first, I've got to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, PrizePicks. So let's go ahead and assume that the NFL season was going on. We're simulate a few months. We're at the NFL season and the basketball season going on at the exact same time. And you're looking for the best daily fantasy option out there. PrizePicks got you covered. And you're looking for somewhere that you can do cross sports entries. Well, PrizePicks got you covered there too. You can take the over on, let's say, a Kate Cunningham points. You can take the over on Jaden Ivey's assist. And then you could also go cross sports and take the over on Jahmyr Gibbs' receiving yards. You can take the over on Jared Goff's passing yards. Take the over on Amon-Ra St. Brown's passing or receiving yards. Put them in the exact same entry. You can do that with PrizePicks, and it's why it's my favorite daily fantasy option out there. You pick 2 to 6 players to see if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projections. You can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch, and I promise you, if you're thinking of a sport right now, it's on there. Any sport you're thinking of, I promise you, PrizePicks has it. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's just that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports today. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON as sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100 with PrizePicks. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. If you guys see me looking down, it's because I'm looking down at my phone every now and then because I keep getting these updates from Woj, from Shams, from Zach Lowe, from Chris Haynes, and I'm just waiting to see if there's some Pistons news that pops up when I'm recording the podcast, because I believe that happened last year at one point. We had some news pop up while I was recording. I missed it. So I'm just making sure I'm staying tuned. You know, this time can get a little crazy with the NBA free agency and offseason. The day before, a lot of moves could potentially be being made to clear up cap space. So just making sure I'm staying up to date. All right, so in this segment, I want to talk about what trades do I want and why do I want them. And before I get to a specific trade that, a specific player that I want them to go get, whatever, I want to talk about the philosophy behind what kind of trade I want. And you guys are going to disagree with me. And again, in the comment section down below or over on Twitter, let me know what kind of trade do you want. Not necessarily you have to tell me the exact player, the exact package, all of that stuff. Just tell me what kind of trade, the philosophy behind why you want whatever trade it is. So, and again, I will get to a certain player, a certain package, etc. later. But the philosophy I have right now is this. I look at the Pistons roster, and if you guys remember right after the season ended, I said that I felt like this team, while it did win 17 games, was not as bad as people maybe thought it was. I did not think the team was very good. I was one of the people before the year that said, I think Pistons fans are going to be disappointed. They're not very good. They're trying to tank another year. But I don't think they were as bad as they looked this past season. And I thought a lot of times they tanked the end of the games to purposely lose, especially at the end of the season. They were purposely running lineups out there that made no sense, purposely sabotaging players. Like, it was a very clear tank. They could have won a little bit more than they did. It was just a tanking process. But after the season, I said that I don't think this team was that as bad as it was. And if you simply added wings, replaced their entire wing room, that this team would be better with a healthy Cade coming back the next season, continued improvement from all the young guys, with some new wings. I thought they would be way better next season. Like, I still believe that with the addition of Asar, if they went and signed a wing and replaced Bojan with a more athletic, defensive-minded wing, I think that they would be a lot better next year. I think they could win like 33 to 35 games. Maybe if K takes a crazy leap, they could get up to like 38 wins. Like, I don't think that they're as far away as some people may think they are from being that level of a team. Will that be a play-in team? Probably not, because it's really competitive at this point. And there's a lot of parity in the league. But I think that would be seen as a really big jump. And I think a lot of people would be extremely happy with that and see the future of the team. And I think they can do that without replacing all the young guys. With that said, that leads me into the philosophy behind my trade. What I want the Pistons to do is to trade Bojan or Burks. And honestly, I could see a future where I'd like both of them traded. And I just want to give my argument here why. Now, I know Howard Beck was on the last episode, and he brought up that there's two different philosophies you can go with here. You can go with the philosophy I'm about to lay out for you guys, and that at this point, they have the most value on the Pistons. They're older guys and on the timeline. You want to capitalize on their value, get some assets back that will help you continue to move forward. That is one way you can go about it. It's not right or wrong. You can go that way. Or you can go the way of, we don't care about the assets. We just want the good vet here right now. We might want to try to win a little bit more next season, I think, and we think they could help. I wouldn't want to do that. I don't think that's the best way to go about it. I would go the assets way. So what I want the Pistons to do, I want them to trade Bojan or Burks along with Bagley. And the purpose behind it will be to free up minutes for the young guys. Because as of right now, one of them is Killian Hayes, and you guys know I like Killian Hayes. I think him and Sasser fit so perfectly in the backcourt. And there's almost a part of me, there's a part of me also that believes the team might just be simply better because of the defense that backcourt would provide on offense or on defense, and then the spacing around a ball handler like Killian on offense. I actually think that duo would just be, there has a chance to just be simply better. That's what I believe. But it's not just about Killian Hayes either, because I know that's going to be the first name everyone brings up. It's also Isaiah Livers, which Troy Weaver has talked a lot about. He's went out of his way to bring up Isaiah Livers. I like Isaiah Livers a lot. I think he should get some minutes. I think he can be a good defender who just shoots threes, and that's what the team needs. And he's cheap. He's there for cheap, and he's one of your young guys. Why not play him? I'd like to continue to play Isaiah Livers, but as the roster sits right now, if you add another wing to this team, not only, I know you guys are going to think I'm just talking about Killian Hayes. Yeah, Killian looks like he might be out the rotation if that's the case, but Livers also would be out the rotation in that case, and then you'd also have Marvin Bagley, who's $13 million to sit on the bench, not playing either. So I would like the Pistons in this free agency, or before free agency, whenever they do it, to make a trade to free up some of the roster and make room for these guys that I'd like to have minutes. The bench unit that I would like the Pistons to run out there next season would be Killian, Sasser, Livers, Stu, and Wiseman. I think that would be absolutely perfect. Or if you want to start Stu, if they want to start Stu, that's fine. Then go Kill, Sasser, Asar, Livers, and Wiseman, and then you can start Ivy or Cade, Ivy, free agent signing, Stu, and Duren. I think that right there, whatever tandem, I think that 10-man rotation would be really good. Maybe not really good, because really good, you would assume they're like a playoff team. No, I don't think there's any lineup they can do that's going to be a playoff team next year. But I think you guys know what I mean. I think that could win like 35 games next year. I think you'd see improvement from a lot of guys. I truly don't, and I guess to back up this point more, if you guys remember one of the first episodes, you guys can see that I'm being consistent with this too. This is not me just coming out of nowhere trying to be biased. You guys will remember right after the season I said, I don't care about, not that I don't care, I care more about defense on the wings than I do shooting at this point because of how bad the Pistons were defensively on the wings and how much it limited their team. I think the defense on the wings and the overall play of the wings, the lack of playmaking, the lack of defense, athleticism, I thought that was the biggest weakness on this team. So while I know Bojan provides shooting, I think the team would just be better if they had a defender, athletic defender at the position rather than Bojan. That's what I believe. Because I think their defense was the biggest reason why they were so bad this past season, not their shooting. If they were a better defensive team, they would be able to get out and run more. They'd get more transition looks. They'd play fast more. But you have to be able to get stops to do that. And they couldn't get stops for nothing because their wings were so awful. I think the wing room was the worst in the entire NBA. So if you replaced, this is just my thinking. Maybe you guys can disagree. My thinking is if you replace Burks and Bojan with a great defender, what people believe, and Sasser, who's a great point of attack defender, and allow Killian and Livers and Stu to play off-ball defense and be switchable, I think that would be absolutely fantastic on the defensive end. And then in the starting lineup, you have Cade, Ivy, Asar, another defensive guy at the 4, whatever free agent you bring in, let's say Cam Johnson, along with Jalen Duren. I think their defense shoots up with those guys, and that translates to their offense being better because I think this is a team that needs to run. I don't think this is a team that's going to be great in the half court immediately. They have a lot of young guys and a lot of guys who need to figure stuff out in the half court. But I think they can be not great, but a really good transition team that can help their offense be fine if they're just better defensively. And I think by trading the guys I'm talking about and replacing them with defensive guys, younger defensive guys, I think they'd just be better. That's what I believe. I don't think the shooting is the biggest concern. I think the biggest concern is defense. So here's why I talked for a long time during that segment. But basically what I'm saying, you guys get what I'm saying there. If I had to pick a specific trade to do, the Tobias Harris trade is one of the ones I've brought up a lot. If you miss on Cam Johnson, then you can trade. I think if you offer Bojan and Burks for Tobias, I think that's something maybe the Sixers would listen to. If you wanted to maybe fill up the cap space by taking on Gordon Hayward's contract, that's on a 1-year deal as well. You wouldn't offer both Bojan and Burks for that, but you would offer one of them and maybe Bagley or something. Probably Burks and Bagley or something like that for Gordon Hayward. I can see them doing that. Tobias is really the one I'm looking at. Or you could take on a bad contract. You can take on a bad contract and just take assets with it. Now, there's not many bad contracts across the NBA. I've tried to look on Fanspo for a potential trade, and the only one that I can come up with is Ben Simmons with the Nets, but I don't know how urgent the Nets actually are to get off of him. So there's not many bad contracts across the NBA where you could actually do that. Situations arise all the time when teams all of a sudden need to get off some cap and they need a team to take it, just like the Pistons did with the Knicks last year. So opportunities may arise, but as far as players to target and trade to package guys, if they were to miss out on free agency, if they were to miss out on some of their big guys, that's the Tobias Harris type of deal is what I'm looking at. Or maybe, again, a Gordon Hayward who's on a 1-year deal, do the same kind of thing, just not give up I think Tobias is a little bit more valuable than Gordon Hayward because Gordon Hayward can get hurt for the season at any moment during the season. But that's my idea behind a potential trade if the Pistons do a trade. Doesn't mean I want them to doesn't mean they have to make a trade. But if they do a trade, that's the type of trade I'd like because, again, I don't want to take another 2 minutes to explain what I just said, but you guys get the deal. You guys see where I stand with it. So I'm interested to see in the comment section and on Twitter at KukaHill how much you guys disagree with me. I know there's some people out there that do agree with me, but I know there's a lot of people who are not willing to do that, and they want to see a big step forward, which means they think that they need to have a big splash from free agency. They need to get a lot more guys in and replace a bunch of dudes. I don't think that's what they need. But, again, I want to hear from you guys in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at KukaHill. When we come back, I'll talk about what I believe could possibly be the worst-case scenario for the Detroit Pistons coming up in free agency or just throughout the offseason, really. We'll talk about that when we come back. But first, you guys got to hear from some of our lovely sponsors. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. All right, what I believe would be the worst-case scenario for the Pistons. And I know we're talking about just free agency, but during free agency time, it's not just signings. There's trades and stuff that happen. So when I say free agency period, I'm not just talking signings. A bunch of other stuff can happen during free agency. So I hope you guys understand that. Worst case scenario during free agency period, I talked about one of them earlier in the podcast, overpaying for a mid guy. I think if they were to overpay for somebody, we'd all sit around and convince ourselves after it happened, that's not that bad. You have a bunch of rookie contracts. The cap sheet's still going to be straight. It's not going to handicap you that much. You're going to be straight. Even if there's some truth to that, I think I don't want to overpay somebody that doesn't deserve it and then in a few years look back at it and we feel like the Charlotte Hornets did with Nicholas Batum. That's not how I want this to be viewed. And I'd like it if the guy you overpaid, at some point, if you want to move on from him, he's not looked at as a negative asset, which I think everyone, once you get to a certain extent, you start to overpay somebody, their value drops. Maybe not to the point when they're a straight up negative asset, but maybe not as much of an asset as they would have been if you got them on a fair deal. So, and the big reason why I feel like this, you guys have heard me for a while now. For those of you guys who are everyday listeners, I understand the Pistons are going to have to overpay somebody to get them in free agency. I've said that many times in the podcast. But what I've also told you guys in the podcast is when the Pistons decide to overpay somebody, they better make sure that's the right guy to overpay. That's a guy that could potentially grow into the contract. Maybe he's not worth it right now, but he could grow into it. You guys will remember last offseason, I thought that potentially could be DeAndre Ayton. Right now, it looks like I would be wrong about that. If they would have went and did that with DeAndre Ayton, doesn't look like, I mean, maybe if he was with a different team than Phoenix, maybe he could grow into something. But right now, it looks like maybe I was wrong with that. But the idea behind it was, I still believe. I was just wrong potentially on the player. Cam Johnson, I think, is a guy I'd be okay overpaying to the point of like $27.5 million, but over that, I'm really uncomfortable doing so. And then with this free agency period, I don't see a guy. I just don't see a guy that you can overpay and be like, oh, we believe that dude will grow into it. Like Jeremy Grant, when you signed Jeremy Grant a few years ago, the whole point of that was because you believed he had more in him and you want to give him a chance to show that he did. So that was the whole point of that deal, and it was for $20 million. And guess what? That deal ended up looking like a bargain contract. Jeremy Grant, you're going to get a big payday. That's a really good one. That's the type of signing I'm talking about. I don't see one of those guys in this free agency. If you guys do, let me know. The only other one besides Cam Johnson that you guys saw me pushing for a minute there, but he's not available anymore, it was Kristaps Porzingis. I thought that would be a guy that you could overpay, that people would probably look at in the immediate reaction would be like, oh my God, you overpaid that injury-prone dude. Why'd you do that? Blah, 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 blah. Not realizing that he just had one of the best season of his career, playing the most games in a season since his second season, and maybe he found something, and then he could grow into it, and he could be an all-star in the East. Like, that was the only other guy I could see that happening with. So, if they miss on Cam, doesn't mean I don't want them to sign any other guys. I would rather not overpay for any of these other guys in free agency. Cam's the only one I would be willing to overpay like that. And again, even over 27.5, I start to get uncomfortable. The other scenario that I would really not like them to do, and I don't think this is even really an option for them, but since we're talking worst case scenarios, I'm just going to throw it out there. The other one that I would really dislike is if they made some win now big trade, giving up like again, this is not something I believe they're even considering, but again, since it's worst case scenario, in the next few days, I don't know, Tom Gores tells Weaver, hey, I'm sick of this. I want a big time move, make one. And they trade like an Ivy or Duran with someone else to go get like I don't know, a win now player or something. If they were to make some kind of crazy move like that, sacrificing their youth and their future for a win now move, that would be by far the worst case scenario in free agency, or again, free agency period, which means signings and trades during this time. So that would be the absolute worst thing they can do, but I don't think that's even an option. I don't think Troy Weaver would allow that to happen. I don't think he has any interest in doing that. So don't have to worry too much about that, but I am a little bit worried about the overpaying stuff. So I'll leave you guys with that. What do you guys think? Let me know how you guys are feeling before free agency. What do you guys want to see happen? Let me know all that in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you are an everyday listener, please hit that subscribe button at the YouTube channel or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe and peace out.